Close your eyes and try to remember your third birthday, or your first day of daycare, or the moment you learned to walk. You probably can't, and that's not because those moments weren't meaningful. They almost certainly were. It's because your brain, at that age, was not yet built to hold on to them. This phenomenon has a name: childhood amnesia. And the reason it happens is far stranger and more fascinating than most people expect. Most adults can't recall anything from before the age of 2 or 3. Some manage a handful of blurry fragments from around age 4 or 5. But before that, for the vast majority of people, nothing. This is striking when you think about what that period actually contained. Your first words, your first friends, learning to eat, to walk, to communicate. Some of the most dramatic developmental leaps in your entire life, and yet no memory of any of it. For a long time, people assumed this was simply because young brains are too primitive to form memories at all, but that turns out to be completely wrong. Infants and toddlers form memories constantly. Babies as young as 6 months can remember a specific sequence of actions for over a day. Toddlers remember events, faces, and routines. They clearly learn from experience. The memories are going in, so why don't they come out? The answer starts deep inside the brain, in a structure called the hippocampus, the part most responsible for forming long-term autobiographical memories, the kind that tell you, "This happened to me at this time in this place." In the first years of life, the hippocampus is still developing. New neurons are being generated at an extremely high rate, a process called neurogenesis. And here's the paradox: all that growth may actually interfere with memory retention. When new neurons are constantly being added to the hippocampus, the existing memory circuits get disrupted. It's a bit like constantly renovating a filing system. Things get moved around, connections get broken, and older files become inaccessible. The brain is building itself so rapidly that it can't hold on to what it just stored. Research on mice has supported this idea. When scientists suppressed neurogenesis in infant mice, those mice showed better memory retention of early experiences. The very thing that makes young brains so adaptable and capable of growth may be the same thing that erases early memories. But neuroscience is only part of the story. There's also a psychological dimension, and it has to do with language. When we recall autobiographical memories as adults, we almost always do it through narrative. We tell ourselves the story of what happened. We use words to organize experience into a sequence with a beginning, middle, and end. Young children don't yet have that tool. Before they develop fluent language, experiences are encoded differently, more sensory, more emotional, less structured. And when the brain later tries to retrieve a memory using the narrative systems that adults rely on, those early wordless experiences simply don't surface in a recognizable form. There's evidence for this from cross-cultural research. Studies have found that people who grew up speaking languages with a strong storytelling tradition, where parents frequently narrated shared experiences with their children, tend to have earlier and more detailed first memories. The more a child is talked to about their own life, the more they're able to remember it later. So when a parent says, "Remember when we went to the beach and you found that shell?" they're not just reminiscing, they're actually helping encode a retrievable memory. There's a third factor that researchers think is equally important: the emergence of the self. To form an autobiographical memory, a memory of something that happened to you, you need a stable sense of who you are. You need a self to attach the experience to. Young toddlers are still developing this. The classic test is the mirror test. If you put a mark on a child's face and show them their reflection, do they reach for their own face or for the mirror? Most children don't consistently pass this test, recognizing themselves as the person in the reflection, until around 18 to 24 months.
And research shows that autobiographical memory really starts to stick around the same time. Before children have a coherent sense of self, experiences can't be filed under the mental category of things that happened to me. They drift, unattached. This is why even when early memories do survive into adulthood, they tend to be fragmentary, a flash of light, a feeling of warmth, a vague emotional tone, rather than coherent stories. They were encoded before the narrator existed. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Many people believe they have memories from very early childhood, but psychologists have found that a large proportion of these are actually false memories, constructed from photographs, family stories, or imagination. If you remember your second birthday, ask yourself, do you remember it the way you'd remember something that happened last week, from your own eyes, in the moment? Or does it look more like a photograph, slightly distant, almost as if you're watching yourself from the outside? That outside perspective is a clue. Genuine episodic memories are usually experienced from a first-person point of view. Reconstructed ones often feel like watching a scene. Many so-called early memories are simply mental movies built from the stories we were told, and we've told them to ourselves so many times that they feel real. This isn't a flaw, it's a reminder that memory is not a recording, it's always a reconstruction, and the reconstruction begins earlier than we think. So why can't you remember being a toddler? Because your hippocampus was growing too fast to hold on to the past, because you didn't yet have the language to turn experience into story, because the self that memories need to belong to hadn't fully arrived yet. And in a strange way, that's not a loss, it's just the price of becoming. The brain that was too busy to remember was busy becoming you. Every new neuron, every new word, every growing sense of self was laying the groundwork for the person who would one day wonder why they can't recall any of it. The memories are gone, but you are what they built.